It's the 21st of the 5th, 2025. It is 10 minutes past 8, and we have ourselves a hot one. It feels like the old world media, in the form of the boys and girls over at the race, the legend that is John Noble, has gotten to the bottom of this McLaren brake trick. For the avoidance of doubt, it's been techier than techie things, has it not, over the past couple of race weekends? The 7 rounds season to date, McLaren have blazed the trail. Oscar Piastri has the whip hand, he's holding the red pen as far as the championship of the drivers variety. Why? Well, of course the car is quick. The MCL 39 is rapid, flexi wing, mini DRS at the back, slot gaps. The guys and goals over at the Papaya team are exploiting all of the loopholes. Attacks avoider of a car is what they've built. Rob Marshall is god tier, the last front wing bender, some say. So to say that the car isn't fast would be disingenuous, but moreover, its speed is accessible. Yeah, Lando's complained ad infinitum in extremis about instability at the rear, but in the hands of an OJ Piastri, a dude who can nail the V line, who's god tier as far as manipulating the car in and on and around the limits of adhesion, Oscar Piastri can nail it. That's why that dude is in the lead of the championship. But moreover, more than the ability to access the upper echelons of the MCL 39's not insubstantial pace advantage, more than that, it's the MCL 39's ability to mitigate and minimise for the rate at which its tyres degrade. That's why it's so bloody fast. That's why the likes of Oscar and Lando were able to gap Max to the tune of 14 seconds over only a few laps at the Australian Grand Prix, round 1, 2025. When it dried out, the MCL becomes a Neo in the Matrix of a car, god tier, the car that is class of the field, market leading. And that's why when you get around warmer climes, same. Okay, so at Imola, Maximilian Verstappen could live with them, but potentially that story is nuanced because, you know, the Christian Horners, he's been talking a lot of late, saying that McLaren are doing something. There's no way that their tyres can be so cool that they can minimise for the rate at which those tyres deg just with air. Lest we forget, the rules per the FIA states that all they can do, the 10 teams on the grid currently in 2025, if they're focused on cooling their tyres and minimising for tyre deg, is use air. Christian Horner has been arguing the opposite, au contraire, mon ami, saying that there's no way that McLaren can be minimising for their tyre deg like that, to that extent, with just air. And then we get to Imola. Monday before the Imola Grand Prix, the FIA, we come to find out, issued some clarifications of 2 technical directives. The first ascertained or pertained even to skid plank wear. Some of the teams were doing dodgy stuff, but again, this is F1. It would be naive at this juncture for me to expect anything different. However, the second communication was around the technical directive that speaks to cooling brake ducts, double brake ducts as we're calling them now. They also checked Oscar Jack Piastri's car, didn't they? And they said nothing to see here, everything's cool. McLaren are operating within the rule and reg set, very firmly within the parameters allowed. However, we get to Imola and then all of a sudden Maximilian Verstappen is the one who's experiencing reverse deg. What? Oscar Piastri is the one who wants to pit early. Lap 13, some say. Oscar Piastri's coming over the radio saying, listen, I've got no tyres, graining at the back. What is going on, therefore? Reminiscent of Fiddle Brake Gate in 2024. Something, it felt like something had happened. Though correlation dot causation, the first does not imply the latter. It's important that we keep this front and centre of the mind when we're having these speculative conjecture conversations. Now, the guys and girls over at the race said, you know what, phase changing, again, B-Sport, the legend that is, worked for McLaren way back in the day. He said that there is a thing called phase changing materials that McLaren could potentially be leveraging with a view to minimise for the rate at which these tyres are degrading, to which Everybody signed up now, apart from a rare few. The boys and girls at McLaren said, no, that's not allowed. We've had clarification from the FIA. If you're using any liquid of any form to cool your tyres, then that is not allowed. And then today, the boys and girls over the race publish a God tier article. In particular, it's John Noble. And in that, he clarifies all of the weird and wacky world that is theories attributable to this God tier MCL39. Just for context, the FIA published this saying that the car 81, and then again, this was not the Imola Grand Prix. This was the penultimate Grand Prix at the Miami Grand Prix. During that, after that even, they had a look at car 81, Oscar Piastri, to double check whether everything was copacetic. They gave it the clean bill of health. They said, the FIA said, there was nothing in those brakes having deconstructed for them that made that car illegal. Tick, tick. But you forgive FIA, you forgive the F1 fan base for looking at the FIA with a discerning skeptical hippo eye. Because if past his prologue, fuel flow gate with Ferrari, sometimes these teams will bend/break the rules as you would expect them to do, and then all of a sudden it goes away without ramification nor consequence. That was my opinion. Felt dodgy. Just the way that the speed fell off as far as the McLaren F1, as far as the McLaren MCL39, all of a sudden, like magic, the convergence between Max Verstappen's RB21 and Oscar Piastri's over the course of a race just went like this. I didn't have Max Verstappen beating Oscar Piastri, nor did the odds makers. He was something like 5-6 to 1. He was a distant second/third favourite behind the likes of Lando and Oscar. That tells you what they think. And now in this article, again, shout out to the guys and girls over at the race. This article is God tier, and I put a link in the description. Go and check it out if you like yourself some details. In there, they've debunked all of the myths surrounding McLaren and explained why they needed to be debunked and or were illegal. Jonathan Noble. Here's what he says in the first instance. And again, shout out to the guys and girls over at the race. Go and check them out. Go and look at the website. The link is in the description. Patreon is God tier also. Here's what they said. The article's entitled, Revealed 5 Wild Red Bull Theories for McLaren's Tyre Tricks. In the first instance, to my right, this theory called fluid filled skins in the wheel assembly, where you can rule that out of hand straight away. Right? Surely. Because it's fluid. John Noble writes, the first is that they felt it would breach Article 11.5 because its liquid cooling in the brakes is forbidden. There you go. Open and shut case then. There's no way that McLaren could be using this, and the FIA would have banned it. John Noble continues, plus it felt that it may contravene Article 10.8.4d, which states that any device, system or procedure except for driving the car is illegal if it helps heat the wheels, hubs or brakes or maintain their temperature. Now, and that added bit of context which is important, because Christian Horner has been doing the most, has he not? Christian Horner realised that there is durable competitive advantage in things like these. Red Bull have been leveraging them always, particularly when they had the last airbender, Adrian Newey at the helm, God tier aerodynamicist, man who did his thesis at uni 1,100 years ago in ground effect in sports car. Flexi wings, the lot of them, the blow off exhaust thing that Sebastian used, leveraged to win 4 championships back to back. Rob Marshall again made everything flexi again with a view to optimize for lower lap time and durable competitive advantage. Therefore, Christian Horner realised that McLaren had put something God tier on their machine that Red Bull had not, and he kept going to the FIA, did he not? Is this okay to use? What about this? What about if we put phase changing on there? Can we use this? Almost by default then, he's ruling out. Every time the FIA came back and said, no, you can't use this, you can't use this, you can't use this, Christian Horner was doing one of these, crossing off different ideas that McLaren definitely couldn't be using. And now it seems like we have ourselves a winner. But let's go through first what we need to rule out. These are the things that McLaren aren't using. So in the first instance, we have ourselves fluid filled skins in the rear in the wheel assembly. Anytime you see fluid on these descriptions, it's nonsense. In the second instance, fluid reservoir within the wheel bodywork. What's that? Well, from it says fluid, you know that it's got to be banned. Such a design, writes John Noble of the race, is illegal because it would be considered liquid cooling of the brakes, falling foul of Article 11.5 and may also contravene Article 10.8.4d regarding the banning of systems to help control tyre temperatures. And then you got this. What about this, yeah? Drinks bottle trick, behave yourself. This is, of course, alluding to the fact that the fluid that the drivers are drinking from potentially was also being used to cool the tyres and wheel mechanism. But again, liquid cooling contravenes 11.5 and 10.8.4. However, there is a cheeky trick here. John Noble writes, and it's called thermoelectric cooling, something very different from the bloody phase changing materials that B Sport put forth as his principal supposition. John Noble writes, the idea would be not to use liquid at all, but to create a design that featured thermoelectric cooling. Such devices are mentioned in Article 15.4.1 of the technical regulation that outlaws the shape-changing materials that some had suggested could be employed within the wheel bodywork but are actually illegal for use in such circumstance. Phase-changing materials, gonzo, non-starter, caput, sacabo. The rule, continues John Noble, states that shape memory materials except for piezoelectric materials, whatever that means, used in electrical sensors are among the list of materials that are banned totally in F1, with that exemption allowing them a design could be created that would use such piezoelectric materials to help cool electrical sensors within the wheel bodywork and therefore have a secondary influence in helping keeping a lid on the wheel bodywork or temperature. Christian Horner and co. Red Bull Racing put so much effort into understanding, protesting, saying, can we use this, the FIA, that ultimately they've done something, they've ruled everything out, and this thermoelectric cooling is what they are left with. This is the only thing that the FIA said, you know what, as far as that, you can't use anything else. If it's liquid, can't use that. Drinks bottle trick, nah. Non-starter. Fluid hidden in the mechanical components, nah. Fluid reservoir within the real bodywork, fluid again, contravenes the rules and regs. Fluid filled skins, fluid, no go. This one, however, when Christian Horner had asked, and Red Bull of course, the FIA whether this was a no-go, this was reacted to, or the reaction of the FIA was slightly different. This was not a no-go. Therefore, by default, you've got to conclude that McLaren could well be using something like this. Now, again, this is far over my head, my very B-spec F1 mind. However, the guys and girls of the race were talking about it on the most recent podcast, which I will link in the description. Go and support them. God tier minds, mechanical and aerodynamic each and every single time. On that podcast, they said this. Roll the clip.
And it's all like Scott said, no. But for one idea which relates to thermoelectric cooling and basically having a thing called a Peltier device somewhere in the assembly that uses an electrical current that you can change, and that will either make the device heat up or cool down its surroundings. And the FIA language around that is much more equivocal. It basically says, yeah, that's not actually strictly prohibited under the current rules, but we would frown on it and definitely take it out for next year. So if there is a smoking gun, and I'm not saying there is, it probably relates to that one particular idea. And it's
oh, the humanity. Did you hear that? These are the guys and girls over at the race, the bods who contributed to that article that we've just cited, saying that potentially this bloody electrothermo heating or whatever, that could be the smoking gun. And again, it's electric charge used to heat and cool, therefore keeping the wheel mechanism and the tyres in the optimal temperature window. And again, sometimes you've got to check multiple sources here. And when they're all pointing in the same direction, God tier F1 minds, then you know sometimes in F1 there is no smoke without fire. Dr. Ob's one of the go-tiest ones, friends of the channel, and again, super connected with the guys and girls over at Red Bull. Here's what Dr. Robs has said. Let's read this together. This is fascinating in reaction to John Noble, again, who's penned this article talking about all the very different myths and legends as far as the various tricks F1 rumour and word on the F1 curb believed that McLaren could be using. John Noble said the FI's technical directive issued pre-Miller on tyre cooling has offered some fascinating insights and wide ideas, although the governing body has shut down almost all of them except for the final one, thermoelectric cooling, to which we've just referred to that. Dr. Rob's friend of the channel says, this is fascinating. The use of Petlier devices is not something I'd considered. However, it is 1,000,000% doable in my mind. And the FI response is curious because this is not deemed to be legal for 2025. So game on. Now listen, sometimes you've got to look at what Dr. Hobbs is not saying to understand what he's trying to say. Game on. Don't think for a second that he won't be having conversations with his guys and girls, his friends over at the Balls That Are Red, to ensure that they're instituting, if they haven't already instituted something like this, because it's legal, chat, and there will be durable competitive advantage and therefore upside on track in terms of lap time by putting this on those Red Bull RB21 cars. Obbs continues. You could reverse the design to help heat the tyres a faster warm-up and cool the tyres during sustained running. How you locate these, however, would be interesting. Could you impregnate them in the carbon weave somewhere? Then you would certainly have exposed leads somewhere. That would seem obvious to spot. Curious indeed. Dr. Obbs concludes, touche, sir. I think this is very curious, and I think we have ourselves a eureka moment going in to the Monaco Grand Prix this weekend. Do not doubt for a second that the guys and girls over at the Balls That Are Red, Christian Horner, Pierre Vacher et al., Enrico Balbo too, will be working on this if they haven't been working on it already. I feel like we saw convergence at Imola, but don't doubt for a second that that convergence story is going to continue. It's going to go on. They're going to close the gap on McLaren. And then, lest we forget, we have round 9 as well, when there's an additional technical directive as far as flexi wings. Flexi wings being the source of plenty of that McLaren durable competitive advantage. Double whammy, therefore, as far as Red Bull are concerned. Chat, I don't know what to make of this. It's going to get techie. Maximilian Verstappen must be reading this thinking, you know what? Game on, ladies and gentlemen. Joanna, you're an absolute legend. So Red Bull found something legal, but they found zero illegal on the McLaren. Absolutely nailed it, Benzi. It feels like by dint, it's almost by exclusion, right? They kept putting in protests saying, can we use this? Can we use this? FI is like, no, liquid, no, can't use that. Ergo, none of those things could be on the McLaren car. Now, however, John Noble, God tier F1 mind, seems to have come up with a solution. And again, important that we say correlation, full stop, causation. The former even, does not imply the latter, but it feels like John Noble might have happened upon something here. That something has a name, and that name is thermoelectric cooling. Oh, the humanity.